Hey, it's Justin KANOYA, DJ, business coach, and idea sharer. And in this video, I'm taking you through the entire build process of my current wedding ceremony sound system. The components of the system are pretty simple. It's kind of crazy, really. It's just 3 items. I have an Allen and Heath ZI-10FX mixer and 2 wireless microphone receiver chassis, the Audio Technica System 10 Pro and the Audio Technica 4th Generation 3000 series. Additionally, there is a custom input-output patch panel, a 2U drawer that I use to store microphones, lav packs, and other accessories, and of course, all the cabling, which were custom built to specific lengths. The entire system is housed in a 4U rolling case from SKB. It's a Studio Flyer Rack, and the model number is 1SKB-1S4U. Now, this rack was designed with the idea of a mobile studio. So you'd have audio components racked up and utilize the top platform for a laptop. So my idea was to use that space for my mixer instead of a laptop. Laptops are much thinner than a multi-channel audio mixer. This is where my first problem arose. Now, I know the process to go from the beginning all the way to a finished product is never easy, nor does it go as planned. But this was not getting off to a great start. After ordering this case, it was only then that I checked the dimensions of this lid, because the whole idea was that I was going to be able to put the mixer right here and that everything would shut just fine. However, that's not the case, because we can see this is what happens. So that's nowhere near what we needed to do. You know, I think part of it is this, this foam, which is really thick. I kind of had an idea that I could modify it in a way, and the whole idea is that if I can cut off this part, that we could sink in the mixer, and it actually might be a little nicer that way, just because it'll be a little bit lower, not as exposed to the elements. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna kind of go through the whole process of how I've done that. Since I had just one chance to make this cutout, I wanted to take all the necessary precautions. So I would use the box that the case was shipped in and create a template from the cardboard. I cut a piece from it and then traced the outline of the bottom of the mixer onto the cardboard. Once I did that, I cut the template and brought it back over to the case to draw out the cut lines. Then it was time to cut. But first, to make things easier, I peeled off the carpet so I wouldn't have to have a battle cutting through it. Once I scored across the line, I would pull up the carpet, and I gotta tell you, this stuff was glued on really, really well. At this point, I was getting kind of nervous because there was no going back. And keep in mind, this was not a modification that I thought I was gonna have to be doing, so I was really just improvising at this point. With the carpet pulled off, it was time to cut out the opening. I used a jigsaw for this, and honestly, it was a lot more difficult than I thought it was gonna be. Looking back, I probably should have at least tried a hacksaw to cut this out, because the jigsaw was just really powerful and it was bouncing a lot. But anyway, I think I was just stubborn. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna use this, and I just forged ahead. With the big cut done, I filed down a few edges since there were a few spots that were rubbing up against the mixer when I was doing my initial fitting test. Eventually, it fit like Cinderella and her shoe. One last thing about this cut, I knew that I did not want to leave those edges bare. All right, so now that we've got this cut, you know, I was talking about putting something here in this area where the cut was made, because honestly, this is a pretty rough cut. And for one, it doesn't look that great, but also these edges are pretty rough, and I just don't want to scuff up the side of the mixer. And just one day, it just kind of hit me to grab some of this, this is, you know, the plastic cord control covering, so, you know, you could put a bunch of different cables in here, and that's how you do some cable management. You know, we do it inside our coffins. I mean, I have this in my office or on my desk, and it just made sense to just open up this little sleeve and just work it along the carpet that's right here. And actually, because of the size of this, it really bites down really well on here. So I've already done this one portion. We're gonna do it on 3 sides. I've already done this top portion, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest, and then we'll see what it looks like. By the way, you might be wondering how I got the mixer to float in that position. I accomplished this by installing a 1U shelf just beneath that laptop platter. The shelf is what the mixer is actually sitting on, while friction from the sides of the opening holds it in place. With that hard part now done, it was time to build the cables and the patch panel. Now, I'm actually repurposing a old panel from my previous Ceremony system, and sort of some good and bad news. This one is pretty much good to go. However, I've added another microphone system, which means I need BNC connectors on the side to connect the half-wave antennas. Now, I've got them on this one, but this one doesn't have enough punch-outs that I would need for all of the connectors that I need to use. So, word of the wise, in the future I would have just added a bunch of empty holes to future-proof myself. Same with this one. I future-proofed, but then I didn't put BNC connectors on here. So my plan is to go ahead and drill my own holes, and then I'll repurpose these old BNC connectors to use on this panel. So I'm gonna attempt to drill my own holes through this metal plate. Hopefully I succeed. Drilling this hole was also not easy, and there was probably a better tool and a better bit for this job, but I did my best. And once the pass-through BNC connectors were in place, you really couldn't tell it was kind of a shoddy job. Most importantly, a test of the connection showed all was good. I applied new labels to the panel, and it was ready to go. That panel needs to attach to some cables and connectors. While I've had this done for me in the past by businesses like NLFX and Redco, I decided to take on this project myself. Now, I definitely don't do as good of a job building cables than those others, but it's really a fun process, and I like having the peace of mind of getting the cables to the exact length that I need. The task at hand required 5 cables, and here's how that all breaks down. So I've got 3 right angle male connectors that I've got to create that have just regular female ends, and those will be for the microphones. And then I've got my master out, so those are 2 additional right angles, but of course they're female ends, and they're gonna be hardwired into my patch panel. So I'm gonna start making some cables here. We'll kind of go through making one of them, and then let's sort of go from there. The tools I use include a wire stripper, wire cutters, soldering iron, 6040 rosin core solder, and it's always helpful to have a device like this that give you extra hands. You might also notice that the cable does not look like a typical XLR cable. That's because this is specifically meant for rack installs. The thinner gauge of this wire just works much better inside a rack. This type of cable is essential if you're doing projects like this, and I think I purchased like 100 feet of it from Redco, so I'll link it down below. Of course, with each cable being built, we want to check the connectivity. So another tool I use is a cable tester. This one is from Hosa. NLFX has their own, they call it the mother of all testers, so I'll link that one down below. Alright, with the cables built and the panel soldered, everything is pretty much done. It's just the process of putting it all together. Now my intention was to rack mount a Furman power strip. Unfortunately, while there was rack space to attach it, there just was too much crowding inside. So I got this small power strip from Home Depot, I applied Velcro to the back of it, and placed it on one side of the case. When you know it, it fit perfectly between the drawer and the sidewall, like it was just made for that spot. Finally, something that wasn't intended but actually works for me. With the drawer in place, it was time to add the microphone receivers. In some instances, when you rack two identical receivers together, there's a plate that you can attach to the bottom to secure them together. Since these two are different ones, I didn't have that luxury. However, having them sit on the top of the drawer frame, attached to the rack on their respective outer edges, all I had to do was secure with some gaff tape. Another little hack that was necessary was using this splitter to accommodate the receiver wall warts. Because of their shape, they were not going to fit in that space between the drawer and the inside wall. So I used that splitter to bring two outlets from down in what I'll call a bunker up to the top. Up next was cabling for the receiver antennas. The System 10 Pro has two antenna packs that are slotted into the front of the chassis. But it also has this unique feature where you can disconnect and relocate the antenna pack anywhere using a connected Cat5 cable. So what I'm doing here is running a short Cat5 cable from the rear of the receiver, which will connect to the Cat5 pass-through connectors on my patch panel. The 3000 series uses traditional BNC connectors, so I connected two short BNC cables from the rear of that receiver to the pass-through BNC on the panel. This gives me the ability to use half-wave antennas on the outside of the case rather than the shorter quarter waves inside the case. With all of that now in place, it was time to bring in the patch panel. I secured everything as best as I possibly could. Using gaff tape, I taped loose cables and cords to the top frame of the drawer. The metal made it really nice and easy for the tape to adhere to. Alright, now we're in the home stretch. At this point, I'm going to install the shelf back into the rack. I put a layer of that rubber shelf liner material just to give the mixer a little more bite. The plastic rubbing on the metal was causing it to slide, so the material really helps hold the mixer in place. Since the platform was meant for a computer, it already had some pass-through holes, which I was able to use to run the wiring that connects the mixer to the panel. Alright, so it's done. Okay, no, it's not actually done. Just as I was feeling good and everything looked great, I put the lid on, attempted to close it, and this happened. So yeah, because of that thick egg crate style lid foam, the lid just did not close all the way. Thankfully, since it was the foam that was the issue, I had a solution. I could just cut it out. I took some masking tape and laid it down with the sticky side up. With that in place, I closed the lid, pressed down, and when I lifted it up, the tape was sticking to the exact spot I needed to cut out. I then took a knife and carved out the foam, which was just as difficult to peel off as that sticky carpet. After taking out the thick foam, I swapped in a thinner piece that I had saved for past projects. Not only does that cover up the ugliness of the glue, but it also provided padding for those connectors. And now, a perfect latch. In the end, I am really happy with how this turned out. I like how it rolls easily, and it's still compact enough to slide into my van and not take up too much additional space than my previous Ceremony rig. Okay, let's talk pricing. How much does something like this cost to put together? Let's start off with the SRP for the basic components. The SKB case was $231. The System 10 Pro is $949. The 3000 series wireless lavalier system with half-wave antennas was $758. And the Allen and Heath ZI-10FX mixer was $289. There is, of course, the cost of all the other miscellaneous connectors and cables. Some of what I have was bought in bulk, so it's hard to say exactly how much it costs for this particular project. But I'd say on average, if you were to build a custom panel, the cost is about $15 per connector. Keep in mind, that's going to be for connectors for the male and female end, plus the length of cable you need. So if you're averaging between 4 to 8 connectors, the cost could be anywhere from $50 to $100 or more. And I know that's still not cheap, but you need to house all your components somehow. And putting it all together in a single box that you can set up in minutes, maybe even seconds, is such a plus when you're heavy into your wedding season. Lastly, the other thing that is not cheap is making mistakes. And one way to avoid mistakes is to have a sounding board or a partner during your build, someone just to bounce ideas off of. I've helped many DJs on their case builds, and I'd love to help you. If you're interested in learning more about how I can help you, send me an email and we'll set up a time to chat about my case customization consulting services, because apparently I just made that a thing now. I hope you liked this video because it took a lot of work to put together. So hit that like button and subscribe to this channel because it is all about me dropping knowledge and gear reviews to help other DJs. Thank you for watching. I'm DJ Kanoya, and I'll see you next time online.